So welcome to Belfast, Wales. My name's Jonathan Watson, and today's guest is Dan Redmond. Dan has been involved in karate for 48 years, holding the rank of 7th Dan. He has traveled extensively to places such as China, USA, Russia, and Cuba. Dan was also one of the first members of the NIKB karate team, and he's also the chief instructor of Chujo Karate Association, with various clubs located in Northern Ireland. And Dan has also written a book about his experiences and his life journey, the Pennybridge Boy, which got here, and is available to order from Dan himself. So Dan, thanks very much for coming on.
Pleasure.
The book parts your own life experience, pretty much an autobiography. And you grew up in Pennybridge and Ballymena, and Pennybridge is obviously a lot different now than back in the day. What was it like those early days, kind of growing up in Ballymena, and how different was it compared to now?
Well, I was born in 1942, so it's a fair while ago. The Pennybridge is now a thriving industrial estate, but in my day it was just a nice green patch, of trees and some quaint houses, and there was a little bridge there, and we crossed over the bridge to go home and down a little lane. The lane was called Cow Lane, because it was like a farmer's lane.
Okay.
And the Pennybridge itself was. Whenever I asked my own dad about it, he told me that one time, before his time even, it had been a toll bridge, and people crossing over it, even walking or taking cattle over or whatever, had to pay a penny to get over. So, like, we grew up in a very, very, we were kids, just, the house was on its own, there was no kids to play with. We grew up in a very sheltered environment, and, for to go to Port Rish in my day, or to even go into town, or even to go to Belfast, was like going to the other side of the world. Yeah. So, it's changed so much. Nowadays you have got, I know many people criticize them, but I think that the cell phone is one of the most wonderful inventions ever. We had no phone, we had no electric light, outside toilet, a family of 7 in a 2-room building. It's just a whole new world now for me, and I tell my kids about it, my grandchildren, and they become amused, some of the stuff I tell them. So
yeah. And in the book, when you were growing up, I know obviously you've boxed, you're obviously teaching karate, and you competed in full contact tournaments. You didn't start out that way. I think you were on the receiving end of unfortunately of some bullying. Can you talk a bit about that and what that was like back then?
Well, as I said, we grew up in a very sheltered environment. We didn't see other children until we started school. There was myself, my brother, and my sisters, and that's all we ever saw. We played with them. So, obviously we were very soft. We were very quiet children. We were very easily intimidated, no confidence. And when you went to school, you were going in amongst the townies, little toughies, who'd been around the block a few times. And, it's like the animal in the jungle. I always say, like, the animal, like the lion, will single out the weakest looking beast. Or the criminal, even on the street, can tell if you're a victim by how you walk and how you present yourself and all that. The same at school. They saw that we were soft children and they gave us a bad time.
Yeah.
And we were bullied. I was bullied every day, most days, on the way to school, on the way home, at school. Took your money off you if you had any, took your lunch off you, punched you. And, you didn't go to the teachers because they didn't listen to you. You didn't go to your parents either. As a matter of fact, the teachers themselves in those days were quite bullies. They were fond to leave on the strap and the cane, and you know, it was totally different than it is now.
Yeah.
It was a different life.
Because
So,
I think that's the coming from that kind of similar beginning myself, being bullied. That's the thing you learn as you get older. Is that really way
mhm.
bullies operate, as you said, they're it's like a pack mentality, like pack animals, and they look for
That's right.
people who are like maybe head down, avoid eye contact, and they go,
Yeah,
oh, and
yeah,
it
that's right.
always starts with testing the waters to see what can I get away with. Will you fight
Yeah,
back? Um, I know that went on for a while, and I know there was a um instance where like I think it was if I always remember right, a cousin came along. I think a group of guys had
yeah.
made it outside school for you, and I think it was a cousin came along,
Mhm.
and they looked at him and
Yeah,
thought, can you tell us a bit about that story? Because I think they definitely really
that's right.
underestimated him.
Yeah, he was. Well, first of all, we had switched from one school to another when we got a different house, and this new house for us was like a palace. We had electric light. We had all the facilities. You had one bathroom and everything. So I mean, I should say, like in the olden times, whenever we didn't go there, I mean, everyone went to the bath on a Saturday night or a Saturday evening. We all the bath in the same bath water. It was like one in and one out type of thing. But when we moved to the new house, we had all the facilities, and then we switched to another school. But it was a small country school, and the kids were very clannish. They were actually worse than the ones in the other school. And because we were the strangers, we were made to feel it every day. And not only was I bullied, but my brother and my sisters and everybody. And, they ganged up on you, and on the way home. You had to walk maybe 2 miles to go home. So you were sure of getting a punch or two on the way home. And maybe took your school bag off you and threw it into a field or something. So one day my mother told my cousin was at our home. He was a very light, made-up guy. He was actually a reporter for a Belfast newspaper, but I was bigger than he was. He was very frail. He looked, his arms were skinny. He spoke in a kind of a very feminine way. He was like the last guy you think would be able to do anything. And he called up for me. And when I saw him, he was on the bike. He said, jump on the bar of the bike. And as we're about to take off, one of the guys who was a real bully, a big guy, he caught the back of the bike and wouldn't let it move off. So my cousin was called Patrick, but I called him Patsy. He said, well, leave the bike alone. And he wouldn't do it. And he sort of stepped off. Patrick did, and he says, leave the bike alone. He said, and if I don't, what will you do? So that was it. And I thought that my cousin was going to get a hell of a hammering. He took off the jacket, and I mean, his arms were like, he looked so. But anyway, his dad, I never knew his dad, but apparently his dad had been a pretty useful man with his fists, and he had boxed in the army or something, and he had taught him a bit. But the hands went up, and they moved around, and then bang, right on him. He threw this right hand and just hit the guy's nose and squelch, blood everywhere. He went down, and then he started to cry. And that was my first thoughts. Well, I mean, this is the guy I was afraid of. This is the bully. This is a tough guy. And he got on the bike, and I got on the bar, and off we went. And then Tommy, his name was, he didn't come back to school for a week. He had a broken nose. But there was no such thing as getting the police or uh, uh, claiming money or anything. That's the way it was. And it taught me something, a lesson that stayed with me all my life, never to underestimate anyone. I learned a lesson that day. I thought I could have taken care of Patsy myself at any time, even though I was a softie. But he taught me that day that I don't know about that. And then whenever I went back to school, of course, I used him as a backup. Anytime anybody gave me any bother, I said my cousin was coming up again, and he'll come and see you.
Yeah.
So from then on, I got some peace.
Yeah.
So. That was my
Yeah,
experience. It was very good.
because I think that, like, as we've talked about bullies before, bullies really, they always from my experience as well, they always operate in a pack. And they always have an audience there to support them. But when they bite off more than they can chew, as such,
Mm.
the contrast is different. You realize that what they've got in front of them is just a facade. It's just this, like a paper tiger, as such, and you
That's
can rip
right.
through it. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
I know you then went on, because I found this really interesting. The book was your uncle William came to stay with you, and this was quite a
correct.
changing
Yeah,
or pivotal moment for you, because when I was reading it, I couldn't help but see similarities with a lot of stuff that's around today. Like, he was almost like maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but he's almost ahead of his time. He was quite
oh,
he was quite
yeah,
it's like similar stuff that Jeff Thompson's taught, or the Krav Maga's guys. He
mm-hmm.
was very efficient in combat. He covered conditioning, striking, even the
Mm-hmm.
psychology of fighting, which
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was surprised to hear of. Can you tell us more about your uncle and on what he taught you, and the impact he had?
Hey, I'd heard about him. I'd heard my father talk about him. I didn't know until I was about maybe 14 or so. And he was living in England at that time, married, and his son was called Danny also. We were both called after another brother who had died. He had passed away at a young age, and of course, both of us got the other brother's name, Danny or Daniel. I'd heard about him. I'd heard my dad talking about him that you know he uh, he was very useful with his fists. He had been a bare knuckle fighter in those days. Um, he reminded me very much of how would I describe it? I'm very interested in Miyamoto Musashi and the samurai and how his philosophy and all was, how his battle plan and all was, and how he did things. And then later on, another man I followed greatly was Jack Dempsey, the old heavyweight champion. He came from poverty and how he had travelled around, and there was boxing was different then, and he took part in bar fights to earn enough money to buy a lunch, and all that. And he reminded me very much of that breed. And there were a lot of guys around the town, and my dad told me that one of them had beat him up one day over the head of a book or something. And he went away and trained, and then after so many months, he went and took care of him. And it's several of those fights, and there was real tough guys who heard about
Sorry,
his
Dan.
reputation. And then,
I'm just gonna close this. Sorry.
sorry,
There's a guy
it's
working. Like,
okay.
sorry. Continue.
Right.
Sorry.
So a lot of the guys had heard about his reputation, and in those days in the old Ballymena, you didn't have TV, you didn't have much to do. So I suppose scrapping or fighting was a kind of a pastime. I suppose that was how they entertained themselves. But he got quite a reputation, and when he went to England, he had boxed. He sparred with the Air Force champion, and apparently he had knocked him out one time in the ring. This was Air Force champion, so he was no mud like. So I'd heard about him when he came home. Of course, I want to see this guy. And the day he arrived, we were living. I saw this man get out of the taxi, and he looked so insignificant. He looked like nothing to me. And I was very disappointed. I remember that as well. And I thought that my parents not had told me these false stories or something. I don't know what it was. But over a number of months, we became very close. Whenever he stripped out, the first thing I noticed, the way his muscles tapered off and everything. And he wasn't big, but there was very little fat on him. He was very, very fast, and his reflexes, everything he did was like lightning fast. He was very quick. And when he heard I was being bullied, he took an interest in me. And funny you should mention Jeff Thompson. I'm a big fan of his as well. I'm a member of the British Combat Association too. And years later, after I went through the karate career, competing at international level, etc., and all over. One day I was training with Jeff Thompson, one of his seminars, and the penny just dropped, and I thought, Jeff is teaching what I was doing 45, 50 years ago. Like someone stops you in the street and threatens you, you try to stop them and try to talk, and it's like the sniper option or whatever, kick them in the shin, let them have it. And that's what he taught me too. My Uncle William taught me that. He taught me things like try not to get into a prolonged fight in the street, because when or not, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And he said, don't talk too long. Don't tell them what you're going to do. If someone is threatening you, maneuver your distance, pick your battleground, pick what it is, or you turn around so the sun's in their eyes, not yours, and all that. He taught me things like, ask questions, be talking to them, suddenly sort of step back, oh, who sent for the police? And of course, if he looks around, let him have it. That was the way he thought for the street. He said the street was very, very dangerous. You can't be fair. And unless it's a match fight where there's somebody and you decides to, as Jeff Thompson talks about, a settler, and you go with your friends to the park and the two of you fight it out man to man, that's different. But the average guy in the street might have a knife. He might have his other friends that might step in. But William taught me all those things. He changed my whole mindset. He had me believing in myself. He had me every day. It said things to me that lifted me up and made me think positive. He took me into the fields, hung up a punch bag from a tree. We hammered that. We wrestled on the grass. He told me, like, if you go to the ground in the street, try to get up again as quick as possible because the friends are there. He taught me about, using little dirty tricks, like if you've been threatened, spit in his face or kick his shins or whatever. To be quite honest with you, the 2 years or a year and a half I spent with him was probably what changed me around. I went from there to not being the timid little boy anymore, not being afraid of people, thinking, well, if Patrick can do it, and William shows me this, I can do it too if I'm attacked again.
Because when I was reading that, that struck me. Like I thought myself, like I know obviously back then, maybe teaching martial arts that wouldn't have been a viable job, but I thought like if he was in this time now, I can imagine having a full-time academy. He could certainly have it as a viable job now, because that's the stuff that's a lot of stuff that people are looking for, and even the psychological parts, the psychological training, which is so vital. I was impressed with that, and even you almost kind of create your own kind of how would you put this? It's almost like kind of your own fear pyramid, because then he made you confront some of the bullies. So he basically said, I'll stay in the background. I'm not getting involved, but I'll be there in case it goes bad. Can you explain me? Can you talk about that? Because I find that quite interesting, and how that turned out for.
Well, of course, after I left school the day I was 14. That was the age I left at school in those days. So I was 14. I gone that day. I didn't want to go back near it again. And, then I met him, and you're talking about maybe 18, 19 months, and I was in my comfort zone. I was away from school. I didn't see these people anymore. I was listening to William every day. He was actually living with us at the time. He stayed in our home with his son. His wife had passed away. So, he used to take me running in the morning and done things like, made you go out to the river and wash in the freezing cold water and all this stuff, He was very, in a different mindset. So then one day he said to me, "You've come a long way." And he said, "There's something you need to do." And of course I was all enthusiastic. And I said, what is it, And then they told me I got to go back and confront these people. Well, I nearly died. I thought, no, I don't want, I'm okay, I don't want to see those guys anymore. But he said, no, you can't. You've got to it's not to prove anything to them, it's to prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
He said you need to go back and challenge these people, the 3 or 4 people that gave you the bad time. And I didn't want to do it. He talked to me over a few weeks, and eventually I agreed. And to make a long story short, I challenged 2 of them separate occasions, then the third one I didn't have to, because the 3 of them eventually got talking to my sisters and asked them to talk to me to say, like, let us all go. We were all kids at school then. We don't want any trouble. We want to all be friends now. They don't want to fight, all this stuff. So, of course, I found out that, they were nothing. And over the years, I met those fellas many times, and they talked about many things, but they never, ever talked about school, and they never talked about me coming to see them.
Yeah.
They'd never done that again. And when they were face down, they had nothing. They didn't see my uncle. He was far away. His only input was, if more than one stepped in, he would step in. But he would not step in if it was 1-to-1. It was up to me.
Yeah.
And that was the way he made me think. And after that, I had a new confidence. I realized that I didn't know, I was too young before, but I realized that all bullies are the same.
Yeah.
After those experiences, I realized that it's all a big front for their friends to get support from everybody. They're really very insecure people themselves. That's why they have to be a bully.
Yeah.
And I found out that most of them always back down and were cowardly if you challenged them man to man.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from those little small lessons, not really actually physical contact, but things that my uncle got me to do, and my cousin Patrick going to the school with the bike and all. I learned so much from those experiences that made me think to myself, these guys are nothing. They're giving you a bad time, but what are they? They're nothing,
Because when I read that, when you take a look at it, and I know people like go, that sounds terrible, but in a way, it was almost like your final exam of the training, your final test of the training. And I get the sense he knew what the outcome would be, that once you met these people, says, here I am, that's sort this out. They would literally, like, their bravado, as I said, their paper tiger would literally just melt away, would crumble away. So it's almost like he knew once you go up, they'll fold. And I think that was it's a very powerful lesson, because you went from obviously being bullied, a victim as such, to finding yourself and finding your own who you are and confidence to be you, to then facing these tormentors and realizing powerful lesson that no, they're not as big and powerful as you make them up. Because I think when you're being bullied, it's very easy in your mind to put these people, not that you want to, but you put these people on a pedestal because you think they're bigger, they're better than me, and you live in fear of them. And then when someone like your uncle comes along and goes, no, that's not reality. This is the reality. It's the other way around. I think it's a very, very powerful lesson. So I found that really.
He taught me what my Uncle William taught me. And have you ever been in Jeff Thompson seminars?
I've met Jeff, but I've been at Tony Summers, and I was at one of your own seminars that you brought.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, talks about the preemptive strike, and that was what my Uncle William talked about. As to say, he could have climbed up the ring and did a bit of boxing with anybody, and if someone challenged him to a fair, whatever it was about, he would have been okay with that, and he would have done the same thing. But if he was confronted in the street, he saw that as a different issue. It was it was a more dangerous situation. You could have been kicked to death, you could have been stabbed with a knife. So he believes in the preemptive strike the same as Jeff Thompson. Well, my Uncle William had me practicing talking to a punch bag. He had me talking to it like, what are you picking on me for? And then everything going into that one punch, everything, and making sure you knew where it was going to be. So he had me punching for the nose, where the nose would be. because he said if you hit them on the nose bleeds and the eyes water, and if they come back at you at all, you have an opportunity to finish it better. And Jeff Thompson teaches the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I find out about those people. There's different scenarios, as you would know, Jonathan. There's scenarios where if you're in a club, you might have a match with another club. There's a referee and all. But in the street, you can be killed, and it happens all the time. So William believed in ending it quickly. Get it over with. Try not to do it, or try to stop the person for a brief moment. But if you sense you're in danger, end it quickly to save yourself from getting badly hurt.
Yeah.
And I've always carried that with me ever since.
Yeah, no, it is powerful. And funny enough, I was at a seminar weekend pastor with my own coach, Jason Bow, and the guys that organised it had asked him about self-defence, and that was the same material he brought up, about the preemptive question, and if you feel that you're in danger, don't wait, don't be preemptive, which I think is I know it goes against kind of what we're kind of taught as kids, but it's so important, and it makes a massive difference to your own safety, because I think that's the reality with self-defence, and you've highlighted this. You could very easily end up in hospital. You know what I mean?
Well, my young Masashi, I've studied him for a long time, and and I know we don't walk about with swords these days and that type of thing, but after he had, at the age of 29, before 29, he had 61 mortal combat fights. He finished, he killed. Then from the age of 29, he didn't kill anybody else. He didn't beat them. He defended himself and did everything until they reached a point where they knew they couldn't beat him. And he never killed anybody again. And then when he wrote the book of 5 Rings, it was his strategy, and he began to question himself. Was he a superb swordsman, or was he a better fighter than everybody else? Or was the other martial arts, were they weaker? Or what was it? And then he learned that it was a strategy, and it was his attitude to warfare. He felt that the only thing that mattered was winning. Because in his day, if you didn't win, you died.
Yeah.
So his idea was win by whatever means possible. So he used all the strategies, like if a fight was arranged, he would have turned up half an hour late to irritate the other person, and all that stuff. Or he would have been hiding in the bushes. He was there an hour early, Or if you challenged him today, maybe tomorrow morning when you came out to go to work, he was there, and that was a surprise. Like, he lived that way. And these people, I find out, like Jeff Thompson thinks that way, my uncle thought that way, and any of these warriors that have to do these things, you'll find out that they're all deep down, they're gentle people. They don't want to hurt anybody, but they have this mindset. And I thought my uncle William had the same mindset as Masashi and Jeff Thompson.
Yeah, I
really think that. Things they say, things they do, so, and I try to be that way. Obviously I'm a little older now, and I try to be more diplomatic.
Yeah.
But if there's no other way out, I'm not going to get into a big, long, drawn-out fight with some guy 20 or 30 years younger than me.
Yeah.
For stamina and things like that is going to count. I'm going to try and end it whatever way I can, as quickly as I can, So
no, definitely,
that's the mindset I have.
After that, I apologize if I've got the timeline wrong. I think you went to England to find work. There was, because I know my own father did the same. There's a lot at that time. There was a lot more work, I think, going in the mainland than there was here. Can you tell us about that? Because I think when you were there, you were working for, I can't remember, you were working for a group, and they signed you up for a boxing match, wasn't it? With another apprentice like yourself.
Well, just before that, Jonathan, if you don't mind me cutting on this, before that, I started to work in Braidwater Mill in Ballymena. That was the main employer in our area at that time, and it kept probably three-quarters of the population off the poverty line. There was people were very poor then, and I was beaten up twice in the work very badly. I carry a scar to this present day. This ear was actually hanging down here. I was only a kid. I went into, that was like, even when I was training with my Uncle William, I went into the mill and started to work. And in those days, I was very light and very frail. And I was just a little boy, left school. And the girls in there were all bigger girls, that they kind of mothered me. They were making, here's my boy here, and sent me to get something, and, they were making one guy get jealous. I mean, his girlfriend was about 4 or 5 years older than me.
Right.
And he was maybe 6 or 7 years older, maybe 8 years older than me. And he didn't like her and me talking to each other. I didn't know that. I mean, to me, it was like I was a child.
Yeah.
And one night coming home from work, he came behind me and pushed me up an entry and started beating on me. And I started to fight back. And I was doing okay, but I didn't see him unbuckle his belt and hit me across the face with it. And it wrapped around me, and the buckle sliced this ear. I was just hanging off. So I ended up getting 7 stitches. And there was people came on the scene, and then the police came and all, and he was taking the court and all for it, and he got bound over for a year. I lost all confidence in the law after that. I felt it wasn't a penalty for the crime,
Yeah.
But then there was another guy working in the mill at that time, and he was a territorial army boxer. He was a good boxer. He was pretty good. And after I got hit with the belt, but I healed up and all, he became my friend. And he was very nice with me, and he showed me little boxing tips and all this, and he asked me to come and join the boxing club and all this stuff, And every morning we met each other, walked past each other, and we did something like, a little move, and walked on. It was fun. We would have our tea together, we talked. One morning as I was walking past him, I pretended to do something, and he just grabbed me, slung me against the wall, and beat me into a pulp. He just beat me right from there to the ground. And I was totally taken by surprise, and another guy stopped it, he came in, pulled him off, and took me into the changing room, washed me up and all, and a big fat lip and nose and eye and all. Again, you didn't know. Nowadays, he would be in serious trouble if he did that work.
Yeah.
But you didn't go to the foreman or anything then. There was no such thing as reporting it.
Yeah.
You didn't tell the police. You didn't tell your parents. Your dad's attitude was, go and sort it out yourself. That's what you have to do in life. I can't fight all your battles for you. Go and do it. So it turned out to be he had had a fallout with his girlfriend the night before.
Okay.
And that was what was wrong with him.
Yeah.
So then after that, I left there and I went to work in England, as you talked about. And that was a big step for me in those days, And I've travelled all over the world since then, but in those days going to England was a big thing. And I saw all the guys coming home, with nice clothes and they had money in their pocket and, and all that stuff. So I decided to go out there too. And don't forget, I couldn't have phoned home. We had no phone. I maybe sent my mother a letter, and it took 2 weeks to get there. That's how behind they were. And I was a male nurse for a year, but I only took that job to go to England somewhere to have a job, and I got there. I didn't like what I was seeing there, and I moved into the building sites. And nowadays they call them a runner. In my day, I was a tea boy. And what you did was you went right in the morning, checked with the men, do you want a newspaper, do you want cigarettes, do you want something from the shop? And you took the list, and then they paid you. You went and got it, brought it to the men, that. So one day, it was a big site. I was working for Murphy, and they were doing a excavation on the London road between St Albans and London itself. And it was a big, big job. And there was about 6, maybe 7 different firms working, electrical firms, building firms, all that. And they all had their own men, and they all had their own T-boys and all that stuff. So one of the guys said to me one night, he says, you're boxing for us on Friday. And I thought it was going to be in a boxing club,
Yeah.
And I says, okay, I didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to show them. I was looking at hockey, but bravado. And Friday came, and I thought it was on a boxing ring with gloves, and my thoughts were, if I'm getting badly beat up, they'll stop it anyway and all this stuff. It's my mindset.
Mm.
So on Friday, I was packing up my bag and all, and ready to go to the boxing club, but they just pushed all the tables back in the canteen. I wasn't hot. And the boy said, you're on now. I said, where? He says, here. And I says, right. And then they had gloves that were the gloves you would have wore when you're lifting bricks. You'd lift 4 bricks at a time and set them on, they were rough gloves. The fingers were cut out.
Okay.
And I looked at this guy, and I never saw him in my life before. He looked scared too. And they asked me, did I have a gum shield? And I said, no. So they went to the rag bag, and they took out the cleanest rag they could get. And they cut it up, put it in my teeth and all, went around, pushed them in around. And the rules were, it was a fight to the finish. When the man went down, you didn't kick him, anything like that there. You didn't go down and wrestle with him either. It was like fighting, fist fighting. You didn't kick him. If he went down, he was allowed to get up again. There was no rounds, and the fight only stopped if somebody couldn't go on or they decided to stop it themselves. And that was what happened. And I was lucky enough, I won the first one. And then the big surprise was the guy beat me useless for a good while. He was a handy lad. He had boxed before. And he was good. I was getting pasted, and then I really just something happened. I went for him, and I got him. And at the end of the event, they had money gathered up that I didn't know about, and the purse was all set onto the table, and they counted it all out. And because I won, they pushed me 2/3 of the money and pushed him the other third. And over the next year, 15 months, I had many of those contests, and some I lost, some I won, but I became, I don't know how you would describe it. I became a wee toughie, overconfident, maybe, arrogant, I would have been very quick to fight with anybody because I thought I was something special, because I don't know what it was. My attitude had changed, big time.
And I know you came back, and you had I know you had problems with gangs, because that's the thing for for people in Northern Ireland, because I know my own dad was talked about this, is back in those days. This is before the Troubles. There was gangs, and there was very notable street fighters as well. Which is a different environment to what we have now. I mean, but remember my dad said there was a gang in the markets gang or something, and they would have when the American servicemen came in for on leave, maybe for a night on the town, there would have been normally fights in the dance halls, because the way the Marcus gang viewed us, you're taking our ladies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What was it like when you came back? What was that time like when you were? Because I think there was a gang in Ballymena or a group of brothers or something. You had an ongoing kind of battle with.
Yeah, there were 2 families of them. The 2 fathers were 2 brothers. They actually terrorized Ballymena. Terrorized it, and I mean that. Every time every week somebody was getting beat up. It was a small town then, and news travelled fast. Some people got seriously hurt. They would have took the wages of some guy coming from work, beat him up and took his wages. I remember one occasion where three of them got a fella, and the litter bin that was on the lamppost, one of them lifted out and hit him in the face, and his nose was hanging off. I remember reading that. One of them, in later life, he passed away. Now, he actually was guilty of killing two men.
Jeez.
He served 2 life sentences. That's laughable in its own way, isn't it?
Yeah.
But one of them happened here and one of them happened in England. Those are the kind of people they were. And when I came home, I got a job in a place called the West Piling Company. It was up near where we lived at. And my dad worked there too. And there was a little man called Alfie, and he was the union shop steward. My dad was always a union man, and he always thought we should be in the union, and I did it because my dad said it was an idea. So you give something every week. It wasn't much. And he came round with the box to collect the money, you see. And one of these brothers was there, and as he came round, he told him, he used swear words, and they hit the box out of his hand, and the money went flying everywhere, you see. Yeah. Well, Alfie was a friend of mine. He was very nice with me. He was sitting in his lunch, and his wife had given him pastry or something. He always gave me one, he was nice with me, So, of course, I said, leave him alone, And one word borrowed another, and he said, we challenged each other, a bit out there. So he said, I'll see you at lunchtime right there. And I said, fair enough. And the word got around the factory. And come lunchtime, we went out. And I remember wearing big Wellington boots. It wasn't easy to move. And he was handy enough, this one, And later on in life, him and me became great friends, before he died. It's unbelievable. We hated each other for so many years. But 4 years before he died, we used to sit and talk downtown and had a coffee and all together. It's amazing, But anyway, he brought me a few good shots, and my feet were sliding, but I managed to get hold of him, And then I didn't stop till I just kept punching him till he was hanging over a thing, and it was over. And then he went back and told his family that my father and me both had done it, which wasn't the case. And then my wife, the girl I was going with, the girl I went to get married to, one evening I was coming along with her to go take her up to the bus stop, and that guy there and 2 of his brothers beat me up. They jumped on me. One of them got behind me and pulled me over a railing, and the other one had a steel comb. There used to be a big spiky end on it. And luckily for me, he didn't try to stab me, but he used this part here to try and cut my face. And he did cut me down the face, but I healed up, They slashed me with it, And they beat me up that night, but that wasn't the end of it. I got a bad beating that night, I have to tell you. And then I went away and thought it over and decided, well, by that time when I came home from England, I was a different person. Yeah. I was I can't explain it to you. To me, I just seen it as the way it is now. And as let me run into a corner, I just said, well, it's them today, it's me tomorrow. I was a bad wee so when I came home from England. I was looking for trouble. I was anxious to fight with people. I had a really bad attitude. The police knew me. They come to my door several times, a whole lot of stuff. But what I did with him was I went away and thought this all over and let it die down for a while. Talked to Uncle William about it. He said, they'll be expecting you. They'll be expecting us. Leave it. Leave it till they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And, what I mean? So I think something 9 weeks went past.
Yeah.
And then I drifted into town one night and I stayed up in Entry. And I saw one of them coming over the bridge. Had a few drinks in them. I mean, my wife always said to me, she's died now, but she said to me, you shouldn't say these things, Danny, because you teach young kids now, and what will people think about you? And I said, This is the way it was, and I'm not going to hide it.
Yeah.
I'm different now. But when he came past the entry, I called his name. And he looked up in the dark to see who it was. And when he came up, I just took him out and gave it to him. And then sent word to follow on to say it was me. And of course, they were all looking for me again. Well, the feud went on. I got the whole three of them eventually. And that went on. We had a feud for 7 years.
Yeah.
And that was, I never wanted to meet them on my own. They were tricky guys. They would, I remember standing one day at the town hall in Ballymena, and one that walked up to me said to me, I said, hello, how are you? He says, I know I could take you anytime. He said, if you want me to come to the car park, I'll prove it to you. But I'd been tipped off about that. My dad always said, don't go anywhere with them because the other ones will be there.
Yeah.
And he had done that with other people. And I said to him, what's wrong with here? And he walked away. But they would try to have got you to go somewhere, and then the other brothers would have stepped out and worked you over.
Walking into a
trap. It went on for a long, long time. And then, later on, one day I met one of them, that one I told you about. Mm-hmm. And he used to stop and talk to me, and my wife was with me one day, and she said to me, you have no pride. And I says, why? She says, look what those people did to you. And I says, but you forget what I did to them. You know what I mean? Like, I said, I'm not, I believe in God now, I'm not a preacher or anything like that. I said, if I can't forgive them, how's God going to forgive me? And she says, well, whatever you like. She would never have spoke to him again, But for me, before that man died, him and I sat and talked about those days, and he had turned his whole life had changed. He didn't drink anymore. He became a little bit religious. He told me he'd done a lot of bad things. And I could see that the person I was talking to at the end of his life was not the person I had known before. Yeah. You could see it in his eyes, you could see it in his demeanour, and everything he did, it was just a different person, So it was a long feud we had.
Yeah, and when did things start changing? I think it was when it was karate that was instrumental in that. Can you tell us about how you got into karate? Because karate is obviously it's a massive part of your life, and it's a. I talked to somebody else about this. Sometimes you do one thing and it opens up all these doors that you would never have thought of before. So how did you get into karate?
Well, I had another uncle, he lived in Stoke-on-Trent, and he was a miner. He went to England when he was a young man and married an English girl. And he hadn't been feeling well, so I went across to visit him. Hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen him since I was about 1 or 2. And one day I went for a walk and called in a little coffee shop, and I heard a noise upstairs. A lot of rumbling and thumping and shouting and all the rest of it. And I said to the proprietor, what was happening? And he said, it's that new thing, kung fu or karate or something. He says, like in those days, this was long before Bruce Lee. Karate was unheard of here, more or less, or martial arts was very little, Maybe judo was here, boxing, but that was about it. And of course, I went upstairs after the coffee to have a look at it. And I looked in the door and I saw them, and there was about 7 or 8 people, and I stepped in, uninvited to look at it. And this little Oriental man chewed me up. Give me I don't know what he was talking about, but I knew he meant for me to get out, So I went downstairs very red, and then later on when he came down, one of his members came over and asked me to join them, and I really, Then he was very nice, and they explained, that this was karate and there was a discipline, and I'd stepped in to the dojo with mucky feet. My feet were mucky. It was a mucky day. He was only over from Japan. He hadn't really understood our ways yet, but he expected us to understand his ways. like supposed to pie and everything. And through the student that knew how to speak Japanese and English, I was invited to take part in the class. And I came down a couple of days later, and I said this before, from the moment I took the first lesson, I knew I'd never leave it. I can't explain that. I was totally hooked after the first lesson. And I was trained there for the 2 weeks that I was there, and then when I came home, I started looking around and I found a club in Belfast, trained there, and then I went to Dublin and trained, and then I used to travel over to France to train, and spent thousands of pounds travelling, every penny I had, and eventually ended up in the North. The Northern Ireland Karate Board was just beginning, and the international team, I was on the first ever international team against the French, Scots, Spaniards, the Welsh, Irish Republic, and English. And I had 3 contests, and I won the first one. I beat the second one and disqualified in the third one. What I done, Jonathan, was, and I'm sure you can identify with this, I know what you do and what you practice, I couldn't take the street out of my way in the competition area. You know, I had this, if you watch the movie The Karate Kid, I had the mindset of the bad instructor. I didn't want the medal. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted the man. And even though I was disqualified, I used to walk off the mat sneering, because my mindset was, well, he's lying there and I'm walking away. Don't tell me he's the winner. That was my thoughts. It took many years for that to change, for me to realize that they could have done that to me, you know, but and it took a long, long time for the street to come out of me. And over time, then I found out that by the strict training and the discipline and, you know, the etiquette of how if you follow the etiquette and all, and you combine it all together, training the mind, the spirit, and the body, you find out that it does change you without you realize that. And I remember one time I was teaching a class, and some little guy was cutting up rough another guy, and I stopped him and said, "Look, easy, you don't have to hurt each other." And one of the parents that was there, I didn't know this guy, and he walked over to me and he said, "Is this the same Daniel Redmond that sent me to the hospital?" I said, "What?" He says, I fought you in Belfast," he says. And he said, "You hurt me very, very badly." And I didn't know what to say, you know. I said, "That was a long time ago." He says, "I can't believe when I heard that."
Yeah.
He says, "That's not I'm only down, I'm his uncle." He says, "I fought you," he says, "and he says, you hurt me really badly. You broke every rule in the book." He says, "You were disqualified that day." I said, "All right, okay." But it took many years. It took many years for that to leave me.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that the martial arts, the karate, and the girl I met and married, both of them changed my life. Had it not have been for those two, my wife guiding, she showed me there was a different way, and then the martial arts took me in a different direction.
Yeah.
And for many years now, the last thing I want to do is hurt anybody. You know, I've stopped a fight now. I'm trying to talk people out of fighting with each other, you know, that kind of way.
Yeah.
I think the martial arts just took me in that direction, you know. So.
Yeah. Look, I think that's the problem. And you can see this, and even like the Jeff Thompson story and other stories. I think when you've been badly bullied and you're kind of you're pretty much other people's punch bag, and you're downtrodden, it's very easy when you find your own self, and especially through martial arts, and you're able to handle yourself. It's very easy then, not that you set out to become like a bully, but it's very easy to fall into that. The anger kind of consumes you. It's like a fuel.
Payback,
yeah.
You know.
And you want to kind of put the hell that you were living in onto other people. And I know that maybe if you haven't been bullied, it's very hard to understand, but it's very easy to fall into that. And I think the lesson, obviously, that like what happened to yourself is you, through discipline and continued self-development, you come out of that, and you can kind of expand from that. what would be some of the things that you use in your own personal development to help you kind of move away from that? What I know you mentioned like meditation and stuff.
Well, before getting into that, there, can I tell you, see, like,
Yeah.
uh, I got involved in all the street fighting in my life, and I knew there was this brutal side. Then I got into karate competition, and for many years I was involved in karate competition. Although I love karate, I see karate competition as a very minor part of karate. It's something, a game, it's a game. The person who wins in the competition area might not even survive in the street. And although that was part of my life and I loved it, after I had sort of, even before I stopped being a competitor, I started to think differently. Like uh, my thoughts about it was like, when you get in close to the guy, the referee broke you up. Well, that doesn't happen out in the street. Uh, if you hit him too hard in the wrong place, you were told off and were disqualified. I mean, there were so many openings I would have used in the street. You would have kicked him between the legs. You would have hit him in the throat. You would have hit him in the eyes or whatever, all that stuff. And I found a hard time controlling that. So after I had left the competition scene, I started to look at other martial arts. I started to think, karate is good and I love it and I'll always practice it, but it's limited if you practice it in a certain way. I mean, it all changed for me when I met Ian Abernethy. Ian Abernethy, we do the karate forums, we call them the katas, as you know. And, if you do a movement to anyone watching, it just looks like a ritual, it looks like a dance. But if you saw it practiced with a partner, and then I started to study that end of it, and I started to see that I read into it, and I went to Okinawa and sat and talked to old teachers over there and all, and spent time with them and all. And they said that you've got to understand where these forms came from. Like, what they meant was, if you and I were together and that type of thing, and we got together once a week and we practiced certain fighting moves, and then you went back home to where you lived, and then I went to where I lived. Well, in those days, they didn't have computers or cell phones or anything. So in order to keep it in their mind, they did the moves so. They did the moves and tried to visualize what it meant when they were dealing with their partner. I started to study all that, and then when I saw the stuff that Ian was teaching, it was like very pragmatic, very, very brutal, And then I realized then after a while, what helped me to change was I found out that most of my involvement was physical. I hadn't given any thought to meditation. My mind was a mess. I hadn't thought about negativity, positivity, gratitude, all those things. I hadn't thought anything out there. And then I started to think about meditation, and I started to spend a little bit of time in meditation every other day. I started to read different kinds of books, like Tony Summers, good books. Jeff Thompson, he doesn't always talk about fighting. He talks about quality of life and about, he's read every book in religion you can mention, Jeff. He is a guru, there's no doubt about it. And, pointing out to you that, we tend to think about yesterday or tomorrow. And I started to lean a little bit towards the Buddhist way of thinking. And I'm not a Buddhist,
Yeah.
but I do follow a lot of what the Buddha said. The Buddha said that that the reason for our unhappiness is attachment, and we are, everything in life changes. You're married, sometime your children leave and get married to somebody else, you change home, we get older, people die, but the human nature is frail, and we can't always accept change because we're so ingrained in the way we are. But what he talked about is trying to understand that attachment is what keeps us unhappy, and the attachment brings a thought into our mind, and then we keep the thought in our mind, and then the mind manipulates itself, and then you get another thought and another thought and another thought, and then it becomes like a mountain, and then you hit a depression. That's a lot of the reasons for mental health today. So I'm very much into that now, into that way of thinking now. I do keep fit physically. I use punch bags. I was in the gym last night. I don't run anymore, but I do the bike and whatnot. I do flexibility and all. But my main interest now is here, the mind, about positive living, about being grateful for everything you have. We tend to think, oh, I wish I could win the lottery. I wish I could do this, But we forget, that we have a nice family, or we own our own home. We have our own good health. We got out of bed this morning.
Yeah.
We have a car. With nice children. We forget those things, and we tend to look for what's not there. And this fellow's talking about this. Say this one thing. In one of the books that I read recently, it was a very, very interesting point. The man said, if you study what you're taking for granted today, is something that you were desperate to have 12 months ago.
Yeah. That's
powerful.
That's good. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah.
Isn't it?
It is. Because I think that and we're all guilty of it, myself included. We do all take things for granted, and you're right. I think we live in a world now that something that we want, then we get it, and then we take it for granted, and we go, what's next? What comes after this? Instead of being more appreciative of what we have at the moment, especially health. Because I know you've battled your own health issues, but you've kept training, you've kept coaching and stuff like that, and I think that's a powerful lesson to bear in mind. With regards to karate, I know obviously the martial arts scene, especially in Northern Ireland, has greatly changed in the past 20 years. I'm sure it's greatly changed in the past 40 years, etc. What are you happy with work? Because I think the problem with martial arts is it's the next shiny object that everyone chases, and everyone forgets kind of the fundamentals. And I feel, I've never practiced karate, but I feel karate has a lot of value, and I think it's actually a fantastic art. And I think it's like the baby gets through out of the bathwater. How do you feel? How do you feel about where karate's went to, and do you feel there'd be like a possible resurgence in the future? Because I know there's been some parts of karate that kind of came into the UFC. I think it's Machado. I forget his first name. He was a karate black belt, and he used a lot of karate in his fights to achieve some victories. So how do you feel where karate? Are you happy with where karate has went to, and do you think it will become more relevant? Do you think people will eventually appreciate it?
Well, I think the teaching that was given to me years ago, they were more interested in what they call the way. They would have taught you became very, very fit. You were very, very strong. But I could never understand any of the katas because nobody ever told you what was in them. None of them knew what the applications were. So I did the katas because I thought you have to do these if you want to go for the next belt. But then it was only when I started to understand what the katas were, when I went to Okinawa, I saw some people who were fierce fighters. And whenever I saw them training, and if they did some move with some partner, later on maybe we were in having a wee drink of they call it a wari, which is a very strong person drink. I would ask about the moves they did. And then he would have got up there in the restaurant to show me that move, how it was in the kata, and I realised, oh, right. So,
sorry.
The people who comes in...
Sorry, there's an alarm went off here. Sorry. That's okay. I can edit that. Sorry. Continue.
the people who come out of karate competition would probably get slaughtered in karate or and them UFC competitions.
Yeah.
Because the stuff you would do in a karate competition is not geared towards that. First of all, they're never close up on each other. They're always at medium range or long range. But in the UFC, you're on top of each other, or in the street, you're on top of each other. So I think that if you want to get into the sporting complex of karate, well, do it, but don't think about UFC after that. But if you're doing practical karate where you're actually, the karate has grappling, it has pressure points, it has arm locks, it has strangles, chokes. Those are never practiced in the competition area. And if you do something like they kick around the knee, you're warned or disqualified. So you're limited in every way. So anybody who's in a karate competition environment, forget about the UFC. And I think there's different schools there. And if you watch the karate in the Olympics and you form the opinion that's karate, it's not. It's one part of karate. It's the sporting end of it. The real karate is the old people in Okinawa. When you talk to them, they practice an art called tagumi. They actually fought each other, the same as the swordsman did and all that. And the idea was they learned karate to defend themselves. I mean, the first karate was in the castle, Shuri Castle. The guards who were protecting the king of Okinawa, they were martial artists, but they would have done the strikes to kill.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're going to do UFC, leave, and you're a competition karate person, forget about it. That's my opinion. There's too many politics. I think there's many people. I'm getting a lot of trouble in the past for my viewpoints, but the point is, the way I feel about it is politics is taking over too much, in the karate circles. There's too many empire builders. There's too many people who's walking about with their lasers and all on them and telling you how good they were, and all that type of thing. I think you need to see them with their key on, do a bit of training and all that there, and then you have more respect for them. They're not all like that. There's some great people, but for me, I get tired of all the politics. I moved away from it. I have a very open mind, and I've come to a couple of seminars where you were there.
Yeah.
My mind is when I went to karate schools in days gone by, we weren't allowed to go to another club. We weren't allowed to go to even another karate club. But me, I would send people to train with Rick Young or Patrick McCarthy or Vince Morris or Tony Summers or anybody. I'd go with them. Yeah. That's the way I think. And I don't have the fear if they leave me because they see something different. Well, then they didn't think much of me in the first place. Go. I have that open mind about that type of thing.
Because I think that
I know as well.
I think that's a very powerful thing, and I think in my own journey in martial arts, I was very fortunate that I met a guy called David Weller, and he's no longer coaching, but he was the same mindset. He was very much he loved Wing Chun, and that was his bread and butter. But he was also fascinated by Jeet Kune Do and Kali. And I remember when I was training with him, he was very encouraging that way. He would brought in Martial Arts Illustrated and says, "Look, read about these guys. These guys do a different style, whatever." I think he gave me a very old karate book, and again he was very open-minded that way, and he encouraged me to be the same, and said, "Look, I'm going to teach you up to a certain level. It's up to you to go and train with other people who will continue development." So I think it's
even in the book The Art of War, by Sun Tzu, he said, first know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be successful in 100% battles. Maybe that's not 100% accurate. Know yourself, but don't know your enemy. You will lose 50% of your battles. Know your enemy, but don't know yourself. So And even Musashi, he learned, he believed he did it under the five elements, you know, the earth, the water, and all that type of thing, and the wind and all that. He called the wind, he called that the different styles. He learned the different styles so that he would know how to compete, you know. The best way I think to explain it would be if you take the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I remember many years ago, Helio Gracie, the old man, I remember him challenging Joe Louis, the heavyweight boxing champion of the world at that time, to fight him. Of course, he didn't do it. And I remember that name, Helio Gracie. And then I used to buy the Ring magazine, Mental William bought it and given me. And it was then it became Boxing Illustrated and Wrestling, the two together. And I remember reading about Gracie. And I remember reading about how he developed his own style by traveling all over the world and competing against different people, and then keeping what was beneficial to make it Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. So he went out and tried wrestlers, boxers, other jiu-jitsu, you name it, he tried it all. And the thing that I actually said this to a jiu-jitsu guy one day there, and he didn't know about it. I says, do you know how the kimura, the technique in jiu-jitsu, came about? And he didn't know. Well, I said there was a Japanese fighter called Kimura, and Helio Gracie fought him, and he challenged him. You know, it was a challenge match to have a go at each other to see. And Kimura got him in this particular move, where I think he's on top of you and you pull the arm up behind, and the audience heard a crack, and a bone had broken in Helio Gracie's arm, but he wouldn't give in. And your man applied more pressure, and he heard another crack, and he broke another bone. And then the referee stopped it, and Gracie's arm was just hanging like this, you know, hanging, broken. But instead of him, he put that technique into his Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So by going to train in other clubs and training with other instructors and talking to other people, I think you become a better all-round martial artist rather than stick in your own little corner, you know. So you would think very much like me, I think, you know, I think the same.
Thank you. We're near the end of our time here, Dan. What would be one of the biggest lessons you've learned? I know you've covered quite a lot of your philosophy and stuff, and which is great. But what would be one of the biggest lessons if you had to kind of dial it down to one?
About what?
Just life in general. Like, advice to future people who may be considering getting the martial arts or whatever, or even one of the biggest lessons about life in general.
Life in general.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I would think, you know, Jonathan. Okay, I'll tell you what I do. I told you I'm not deeply religious. I do believe there's a God, but I don't necessarily see the God the way that a whole lot of religions see God. I believe in it in a more spiritual sense. I believe in being able to get out of bed every day and put your feet on the ground. I mean, when you get to my age, I'm 79 this month, and I feel that every day I get up, I kneel down and thank God for the life, you know, for the beauty of life, for the wonder of life, and for the air I breathe, and for this new day. And hopefully live the day in a way that you'll not hurt anybody, that if you do anything, you'll do good, you know, you'll try to, because everybody we meet in life, we may meet somebody downtown and they might be laughing, they might not speak to you because everybody we meet has something going on in their life. They have a problem of some kind. I've learned that. I've learned to not always take people at face value, you know, because, you know, we hear tell of people who you might be talking to today, and then next thing they do something to themselves. Maybe 2 days later, they maybe, you know, self-abuse or something like that there, you know. So I've learned through the martial arts to look inwardly more and try to be more sensitive to other people's feelings, to appreciate the value of life, and to be just thankful for every day I have. I
Yeah.
really do.
No,
So
definitely.
that's it.
Um, Dan,
Sorry, I mean, I'm able to go teaching yet. Many people my age are long retired.
yeah,
I mean, I'm still training and I'm still teaching. Uh, I don't have any plans to stop.
yeah. No, it's great. And
So,
I think
so
if you're an example of if you find something you're passionate about, it's not work, it's not food as work, it's food as a pleasure, as a joy, because you're 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 effectively in the service of others. You're helping other people, students are coming through the door. Um,
yeah.
Wayne, if anyone watching this wants to get in touch or come to your classes or even purchase the book, how can they do that?
They can catch me on just PM me Messenger. I people call me Danny or Dan, but on Messenger it would be Daniel Redmond. Anybody at once. I keep the books on Amazon as a download,
Excellent.
but I still have a few copies at home, and I can post them out. At the minute, it's going really well, and I'm totally taken by surprise.
Yeah.
It is. I actually wrote the book. By time, you just tell you a wee quick story here.
Yeah, definitely.
Have a
Yes.
time. Yeah. What motivated me to write the book was I had different parents come to me to tell me their little boy or little girl was being bullied, and then uh, I would say to the little boy, maybe around the club, I would say, like, I understand where you're coming from because I was bullied. They look at me and they see me with a black belt and they say, you were bullied, and I said, yeah, but I wasn't always like this. And then I would tell them, things like my uncle told me, like, every morning you wake up, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you're great, you're special, because so you are. And I said that, then the woman says, you ever think of writing the book? Then when I started to write the book, my wife was alive at that time. Whenever I put some of the stuff in the book, she said to me, Danny, you're putting stuff in that book I would not put in that book because you're talking about things you did and you have little kiddies coming to the class. And I says, yes, but that's my message. My message is that's the way I used to be. I was bullied. I became very much the villain. The martial arts took me away from that life. Now I'm a different person. That's my message. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I have not had one negative feedback about that book.
Yeah.
People said they liked the honesty. They liked that you didn't hold back. So that's all I can say about it.
It's a
It's gone on from
fantastic book.
strength to strength.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic book, and I mean, I really enjoyed reading it. You just start reading, you go next chapter. So definitely recommend. Definitely when people get the Pennybridge boy. So, definitely worth getting. Uh, Before we go, is there any plans for another book? Maybe one on karate or
Yes,
anything like
I'm
that?
actually doing that. I'm actually doing that because since I did write that book, obviously I've had a long life, and people who would meet me downtown, and who have read the book or somebody has told them about it, they remind me about something that I have forgotten about.
Yes,
So there's so much more, and I'm actually in the process of writing it.
excellent.
Uh, I probably can write as much again. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and I would probably combine the two as one. That kind of way, adding
yes,
to it because there's so much. If I went to each chapter, there's so much more that I haven't added into each chapter.
yeah,
And once you sit down and you start typing, things just come to you. I don't know if you've experienced that. You just find out that, all right, and I keep this here. This is a book of all the notes I keep of things that still have to be written about because since I wrote that book, this is about people have stopped me and told me, uh, and this is a photograph of my grandfather that I never knew before since I wrote the book.
just a wee bit higher,
Somebody,
sorry. Just a wee bit higher, sorry, at the
uh,
photo. A wee bit higher. Ah, there we go. Excellent. Yes, that's okay.
That was my grandfather on my dad's side.
Yes.
And this, you can't make this one out very well. That's my grandmother.
Okay. Yes.
And I only got that from Belfast after writing the book. This
Right.
guy contacted me and said to me, I actually have a photograph of your grandfather and grandmother. And
Whoa.
because he read the book, he sent it to me. You know, there's so much more. There's another book.
Yeah. No good. Excellent. No. Do you have a rough idea of release date or when it's going to be released or?
Oh no, it's not. The way it is, Jonathan, I'm sure if you ever done something out there, you know, you go through phrases, you'll write for about 3 or 4 weeks, then you got to move away from it.
Yes.
I reckon a year,
Yeah.
to
Okay.
get where I want to be with it.
Yeah.
Because once you write it, you have to. I don't send it to a proofreader or anything like that. I go through it myself, and
Yes.
probably read the whole book all over again and do it that way, you know what I mean? So maybe when you do a sentence, you look at it, you say, I could have phrased that sentence differently. And you do, you know, it's going to take another year.
Yeah. No. Excellent.
So,
Dan, thank you so much for coming on today. It was great having you on. As I said, I really enjoyed the book, and I recommend anyone watching this. Book's definitely worth purchasing, and it's a great read. And I'll include links to yourself and to your club. So if anyone wants to come along and train or get in touch, that they can do so. So Dan, thank you, and good luck with the upcoming book, and I look forward to reading that.
well, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Pleasure seeing you again. I remember
Yes.
training with you one time in another seminar, and a pleasure to be on and talk to you again. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Cheers.